Like all the advisors, all the counselors back then, they're like, you're not going to make it on track to graduate if you don't figure it out by like sophomore year.
Or you just spend 7 years in college like I did.
Or you do what Brady did and then just have really bad counselors.
I think the biggest thing that I tell people, because like now at this point in my career, we've been out of school for 10 years or so now. I'm interviewing people to work underneath me, and something I look for is people that don't necessarily come in and be like, oh no, I know for sure, like this is how I want to, like what I want to work on. Because coming out of college, you don't know. Like you have no idea because you haven't actually done anything.
Cool. Let me start with this. Okay, so I wanted to get you guys together because when I thought about bringing John, I was like, wait, we got to bring Brady over because we have like this really cool dynamic when we were in engineering. So like, I'll just give a quick backstory, and then maybe you guys can give your own intros. But yeah, like we became a pretty cool pod. Like last couple of years of Santa Cruz, we were all hardware engineers doing computer engineering. I think career-wise, we kind of went in like different ways or different tracks, which is probably interesting to talk about. But how about John? I'll let you start. Give a quick intro.
Yeah, like you said, I met Chris actually freshman year of college.
Yeah, we go way back.
Yeah, we were staying in the same area at Oaks, and then at that time I used to love playing basketball. Chris loved playing basketball too, so we actually met through basketball first, and then I found out that this guy is doing. At that time, I think Chris was doing computer science, so we actually met at a computer science class. At that time, I didn't pick computer engineering yet, but outside of class, I was doing a lot of basketball, doing a lot of activities, and that's how I met Chris first. And then next thing you know, we started taking more classes together, and then it seemed like we had the same track. And then Brady, I think I met Brady back when we took mechatronics. Yeah, I think that's one of the first classes that we took all together, and
I think that's where I met both of you, right?
I think there was a class before that.
I think there might have been maybe like a EE class before that, but it started to be like we had so many classes that overlapped at the tail end, but by like everything that I've done, I think that mechatronics class was one of the things that will stick with me forever. Especially my teammates that I got stuck with, and
I've never seen John's vein in his forehead so large.
Yeah,
never forget that.
But it was one of those classes that actually like. I'm glad that it did happen that way. It actually brought like the best of me, and I still remember to that time, right? Like those countless hours of staying in the lab, staying until 3 or 4 in the morning, even at times staying all the way up till the next day at like 9 or 8, and it was just one of those crazy things, and that's kind of where our friendship as a pod blossomed because everybody was struggling to kind of get through it together, right? And obviously there was like little groups and pods that were formed within the class setting, right? But we tried to keep that going all the way through our senior project, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
But
what are you doing now? Just go quickly.
What do I do now? I'm a field app engineer for a company called Infineon. They're a German semiconductor company.
That's a startup.
No, not a startup. This is a semiconductor company that's been around for a while. So I'm supporting, tier 1 customers, and then pretty much I'm providing support to their digital solutions for DC to DC. It's really different because when we went into school, like you mentioned, our path and what we graduated with is not necessarily the thing that we ended up doing as a career.
It's weird how
Right.
it worked out that way. Yeah.
But everything that I do now is so EE focused. If I had to do schooling again or go back in time and redo what we did, I don't think I would have been a computer engineer. I would have just went EE right away. Unlike
Yeah.
Brady, I think
That
Brady
doesn't
was
sound fun.
doing. I think I remember Brady also had an EE minor. I think I had two classes that were required to get that EE minor, and I didn't do it, and that's something I regret till
you
today.
didn't do it? I got the EE minor.
No, I didn't do it.
Brady,
I
you
didn't
gotta
do it,
give your resume because yours was insane. I remember.
Yeah.
Cool.
So mine's a little different than you guys. I know you guys met like freshman year or whatever, but I was the old guy coming in, and I'm at least a couple years older than you guys. So I was a transfer student. So I came in technically like my junior year, but I got some terrible advice at my junior college and spent way too long there, and then transferred in as a bioengineering student. And yeah, that was a poor choice. I thought I was going to be like doing biomechanics, and like my goal was to be designing like prosthetics for like athletes and whatnot. But that didn't really work out. And the bioengineering program at UCSC was super like cellular focused, which was not what I wanted to do. And so I remember having a distinct conversation with my advisor in the bioengineering department, and he was teaching a class I was in, and he was like, asking me what was my favorite protein, and I was like,
protein bars.
I was like, I don't have one. I'm not really interested in this. I started taking computer engineering classes, and I'm gonna switch majors. He's like, we only have 2 classes left, so you might as well just finish this. So I finished a bioengineering degree, and then majored in computer engineering. And then at the same time, like you guys said, I got a minor in electrical engineering. And I thought we all met in mechatronics, but maybe it was CE12 before that.
Was that the one where like
That's
the
an
project
undergrad
was
class.
to like make a robot follow a wall or something?
Yeah, I don't think I was in that.
That's mechatronics.
Oh no, it was the one with where we had the PSOC. Remember?
Yeah, I remember that class. Yeah.
And John's project, the polarity got switched and blew it up, and he was so mad. You remember that?
We worked with like some genius guy, and he didn't let us do any of the work. He's like, "Don't touch that. Hold on, I got it. Just wait 30 minutes." We'll just hang out in the lab.
Yeah. Oh, anyways, to finish up my intro, so then we graduated, and I went back to my parents' house in like Central Valley, California, for a couple months. I was like working in the fields with my dad, looking for like an actual job. And I happened to apply to this company, and I got a job and found out that like a few weeks later that John was already working there. So we ended up working together for like a year and a half or so.
Oh wow, I didn't even know this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was there for
like,
I think
you guys
9 months.
would see each other for like 8 hours.
Yeah, well, we worked in different.
Really.
We worked in different buildings, but we would have lunch together every day, pretty much.
That's sick.
Yeah.
That's sick.
So we had like it was like about a year overlap, because I was there for about a year and a half, and then John was there for a little before me and about the same time, but he left just before me.
And he didn't even give you a referral.
No, actually, that company was a mess. I ended up like working there for a month. And the guy that interviewed me he like came over and sat next to me, and he's like, I tried to tell you not to take this job. It's a terrible job.
Oh man.
So I did that for a while at Supermicro in their like debug department, debugging motherboards. And then I went to a biotech company for a couple years, which was super great. And then they got acquired, and I moved on, and now I'm working at a one-wheel electric skateboard company. So
And that's a startup?
Yeah.
That's the one where it's just literally the wheel and then the platform, right?
Yeah, it's not the one where you like stand facing forward. You ride it more like a skateboard, like sideways. It's not the one like big giant wheel where you stand on like foot pegs. It
Oh,
looks.
okay.
It's the one where you ride it like a skateboard where you're sideways or like a snowboard, and then it has like a big giant go-kart tire in the middle. So I've been doing that for about 3 years.
Those are sick. I think I'm pretty sure I've seen those.
Yeah, they've become pretty popular in the last, I would say, year or so. Um, so, but it's been pretty good. I like it. I get to work in town in Santa Cruz, so I don't have to commute anymore, which is awesome. So
nice. Are you still living in Capitola?
I live in the same house I lived in college. I haven't moved.
Yeah, we've been there, right?
Yeah.
Your place looks different. You look like you live in a mansion, like that.
Yeah. The interior looks a lot different now.
I got married, and she took over the interior design, and there's not like a whole bunch of random college crap in here anymore. And I don't have a housemate anymore.
Looks like a completely different place.
Yeah, it's completely different.
Cool.
So yeah, that's my background.
Sweet, dude. Could you give us like a demo one day of your thing?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
I'm with this whole quarantine thing. I've been go back kind of what we were talking about earlier. John was talking about how like he's not like in what we did in college or whatever. I think probably out of the three of us, I'm the closest because I am still heavily involved in board design, layout, and sensors and writing firmware. So I do all three of those things and manufacturing for our company. So during this whole quarantine thing, I brought a whole bunch of work home, and I like made a little engineering desk in my living room behind the computer here, and I've got like 3 one-wheels spread out that I've been like updating code on, and then I take them out for like an hour test ride, and then come home.
Nice.
So
you work in? You're saying you work in your room? You have your own room set up?
Yeah, not really. It's like in my living room.
Okay.
It's like basically right behind the computer here.
Yeah.
But yeah, the whole like quarantine thing has been working from home, but slowly heading back into the office. It's pretty miserable not having all your tools.
Yeah, John was kind of saying the same thing earlier. Like he finds it like impossible to do his work from home.
Yeah. So you're doing coding, right? You're like website coding.
Yeah. So I've been an app developer for 3 years now.
Nice.
I thought it was interesting, like, so to kind of connect back what we were, maybe what we're doing that's related to work. So like, I think a big part of what we did as CE majors and a little bit of EE was like system flow and, using practical stuff like sensors to figure out how, a system really works. And so like, obviously, John, you're doing more EE. So actual like,
like circuit design.
Yeah.
And things like that. Yeah.
And then yours, Brady's more related to like what we were actually building. For me, my sensor is the actual person. So like, I need to figure out what the person's trying to do and then code that, make sure all the everything shows up in terms of data and the UI. So in a way, it's kind of interesting. I mean, kind of the same is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, I don't know. I think John was saying this like when we were in college. It's like you should have just stuck to CS or something because I like definitely like coding. I found like a pretty happy spot with my work and stuff. So,
but I think that kind of goes back to the I guess the viewpoint that we have now is definitely like 180 degrees from when we were back then, right? When we were back then and we were much younger, even for Brady, much younger. It's like the viewpoint was like, all right, so this is like what I want to do. But then after you do it for a while, you're like, man, this no offense, but this is not like where the passion is, right? And then after a while, it just dwindles away, and then you go back and you think about it. And that's why I always think back to I don't know if you guys remember Iman, right? Iman was by far like the most oldest guy in all our classes, right?
Are you trying to say he was like really passionate about?
No, but what I'm trying to say, at least when Iman went back, it's like he's already gone through what we're currently at right now, right? I think he was much older than even where Brady's at today when he went back the same
he was
time with
hyper
us.
focused.
But his focus was not the same as what we were doing. But at the same time, I think he already knew that, okay, if he's going to go into computer engineering, that was what he wanted to do, like career-wise.
I see.
Where us, it's like we thought that was what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
And
maybe in a way, like all of us.
That would be it, right?
Yeah, in a way, I feel like all of us were just kind of guessing like what we wanted to do. Or just
for sure.
Throwing something at the wall, see if it sticks, and then figure it out later. I think that's the challenge of even going to college. Like, I think when you go at such a young age, like, who the hell knows what you're like supposed to want to do, right?
But that was the troubling thing, right? Like all the advisors, all the counselors back then, they're like, you're not going to make it on track to graduate if you don't figure it out by like sophomore year.
I don't know.
Or junior year, right?
Or you just spend 7 years in college like I did.
Or you do what Brady did and then just have really bad counselors.
Yeah, that sounds expensive.
Fortunately, junior college is cheap in comparison.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I think the biggest thing that I tell people, because like now at this point in my career, we've been out of school for 10 years or so now. I'm interviewing people to work underneath me and, on my team. And I think something I look for is, people that don't necessarily come in and be like, oh no, I know for sure, like, this is how I want to, like, what I want to work on. Because coming out of college, you don't know. Like, you have no idea because you haven't actually done anything. Especially unless you've done tons of internships and whatnot. But even then, you don't get full like day-to-day experience year after year working in a place. You just don't know you don't know what you don't know, I guess. People come in, and I get a lot of kids that I've interviewed over the years, and they're like, yeah, I just want to come in and I want to, for just as an example, I want to write all the code for the one wheel. And I'm like, yeah, it's probably not going to happen. Like, I appreciate the enthusiasm, but, you have to kind of pay your dues. Like, I feel like
you got to work your way up for sure.
Yeah. And I feel like for me, like paying my dues, like big time for both John and I was working at Supermicro. Like,
dude.
That was like the absolute worst.
What was so bad about it?
Just as like a company culture,
okay,
it was the absolute worst. Like literally everybody there hated their job. I don't know anybody that I met there that loved being there.
So imagine
they're a public company, right?
They are a public company, but imagine
we're gonna go bring their stock down right now.
a almost like an Asian culture run company on U.S. soil, but internally everything was so like it was frowned upon to leave early. Like they had like this weird thing where they would actually cater dinner to you to entice you to stay later and work more hours.
Yeah,
but you didn't actually have to do work. You just had to be there past 7:30 at night. And then they would give you free dinner.
But then on top of it, they would be like, "Oh, it's frowned upon not to take 2 or 3 weekend Saturdays out of the month to go in, right? So they also encourage you to go in.
Work on the weekend.
Yeah, you only get 4 Saturdays within a month, right? And then they're like, I encourage you to take 2 of those Saturdays and go in.
Well, yeah, it was different for John because he worked in a different department. But my favorite thing was, so we had annual reviews, and like it was a list of things, and you had to fill out. It was first like self-review. You had to fill out how you thought you did on them. And then turn it into your boss, and they would review you. And one of the things was attendance. And so, I never missed a day. I was always there. Like normal hours were 9 to 6, but at the time I had one car, and Leah and I were commuting together. So I was actually getting to the office at 8 in the morning, Nobody else was there. I was just there doing my work. And then I would leave at like 6:30 because she didn't get off till after me. So I was working more hours than normal. And so I was like, attendance, that's like the easiest one to mark. That's a perfect score. Like I work more hours than I'm supposed to, and I get all my work done. And I like turn it into my boss, and he comes back and gives it back to me with a 3
out of 5.
And I was out of 5. And we had like our in-person review, and I was like, I don't understand this one. Like how, like that should be a perfect score. I'm here more than normal. I've never missed a day.
Was your boss Asian by any chance?
He was Malaysian, I think. But he was like, well, there's always room to improve. And I'm like, literally, there's not room to improve on attendance. Attendance means you're there. And I was there. So it was just like a super interesting culture. But the worst part for me was I worked in the debug department. And so I would get like an allotted number of PCBs from that had been returned. I'd get like 4 boxes or something.
Yeah. I remember going to Brady's cube and freaking he had like boxes laying around, just all these motherboards just laying there. And Brady had a DMM and he's doing continuity tests on these small components. And I remember doing that. Like he was doing that, and then because like Brady said, we used to get lunch all the time together. So, but it was hilarious because every time I went there, his boss is actually nearby in another cube, and he would have boxes of boards too. It's like it was just never ending. The number of boxes of boards that they had, and sometimes it could be like a stupid component, like a cap was gone or blown or something like that. But Brady would be like literally meticulously everywhere.
Everyone.
Yeah. Well, the whole thing was like these were boards that had been returned. And so I had like an Excel spreadsheet. I had to put the serial number in it, and then what the root cause of the failure was, why this board had been returned. And I got super good at it, but I would get like 3 boxes a week. I could finish all of them by like in 3.5 or 4 months after being there. I could finish all of my testing in like 2 days. So from Wednesday to Friday, I had nothing to do. And I would ask for more work, and they'd be like, you should just teach yourself some new things. How about I just go home? It was terrible. Man. It was the worst. I was bored out of my mind. But yeah, a lot of it was like probing around and trying to find a failed component. And then 99% of them were bad installs from whoever installed them. And it would just be like, you could see where a screwdriver just like went across the whole motherboard and ripped up like 30 components.
Yeah.
Is that where John worked in the installation?
No. So when I was there, it was quite different. I was actually on the validation side. So I'd validate the power and the signal integrity. But similar to Brady, we had multiple boards that we had to validate, and we had to do all these different tests, and they had all these different test criteria. But our team only had like 3 members. It was like 2 senior members and me. And I was like the freshest one, and we would do boards constantly, day in, day out. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, right? Because it definitely built, a solid foundation of how I would go about working. And I think that's important too, right?
Yeah,
because sure. It's one thing to grill the mindset of, okay, if I have a task at hand, and this is kind of where, Megatronics and senior project kind of came into play. I had that mindset and that frame that said, if I had a deadline or something I need to accomplish, I would go about it and give it, 110. If I had to stay late, I would stay late. If I had to work, weekends, I would work weekends. Yeah. And that was the type of mindset that I had going into work too.
No,
but that was the wrong mindset, because the problem with that is when you first start out, you think you know what the goal is and what the deadline is. And the same thing today, that deadline will then get pushed out, or you have a new project behind that. And then it's just a never ending cycle. So if you take that same approach or that strategy that I had, with school, and gave it 120%, by
burn out.
Yeah, by like 6 months mark or a year mark, you're going to be like, dude, who's my girlfriend, who's my friend, who's my mom and dad. You just be like pissed all the time, and you don't want to talk to anybody. Well, at least that's how I was. But it was good to experience that type of onslaught of projects and deadlines, because then you kind of it made me step back. It made me kind of take a step back and look for it as what it is as a whole picture, and know that there is no true end goal in sight, right? And that's kind of where it's like, okay, I'm going to learn as much as I can here, but definitely I need to work harder and get somewhere else. And that's kind of the whole goal behind that. And although we were there for close to a year, but it's definitely not a place that I would consider
you could
staying.
learn, you could pay your dues elsewhere, is what you're saying.
For sure.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I mean, I think there's definitely, like you said, some good that came out of it. I definitely had skills I gained there, but it leveled off pretty fast. It was like, I learned a bunch in the first couple months, let's say, to be generous, maybe a month. And then the skills didn't change. And it was the same skills every day. And, you kind of get stuck doing the same thing every day. You're not learning anything new, which is what makes it boring to me. If I'm doing something, different, or a reapplication of something I already know, then it becomes interesting again and keeps me interested, and then the job's not boring. The problem with there was I just was bored out of my mind.
Well, that's a good thing to ask. Are you still learning? I mean, that's what kind of keeps you going with our field. Why even do the work if it's not really compelling to you, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a key thing, is to continually be learning. It doesn't necessarily have to be a technical skill. It could just be interpersonal skills, interacting with your teammates, and how to handle that.
That's the biggest one. I'm glad Brady brought that up.
Something that you kind of learn that in university, though, right?
It's different though.
I think it's different because of the hierarchy with the work politics.
Yeah,
and age. Even in different stages of life. When you're in college, you're basically all in the same stage of life for the most part. Even if the age is a little bit different, you're all still mostly young. Most people don't have a family. Most people are just there to get it done and get out. Whereas, in a professional setting, you have the lifer at a job, the guy that's no matter what, he's going to stay in the same job. You have the people that are trying to grow their careers and are interested in the company and everything, or you have a whole array of in between. And then you have a lot of times people that aren't necessarily there because they enjoy the company or anything. They're just using it as a stepping stone, which is, they're all legitimate reasons to be at a company. But it's because of that, everybody reacts to different situations differently.
But going into that, right? I think that's one of the biggest things, is knowing that, being good at one's job isn't just, like Brady mentioned, it doesn't have to be all 100% technical. It's actually how you network. And I think networking is the biggest thing that is not really taught, when we're in college. Like Brady mentioned, you're having these massive, not only hierarchy within the company itself, but you're having, people that are, close to retiring, that just has no respect for the millennials and, younger people. Or you have people that are, just one or, maybe 5 to 10 year age gap, and they're closer to us, but they can see the struggles in us that they had to go through. But that networking aspect is so critical, especially when you're able to find somebody that is closer to their tail end of the career, and they're willing to accept you for who you are and willing to take you under their wing to kind of, I wouldn't say mentor you, but more like a guide. I think those are really important, because, if I look back at, our career is not that long, but if I look back, there's 2 or 3 guys that I can point out and say, these are the key people that kind of were able to guide me and willing to share that type of guidance and their knowledge that they kind of went through, right? And if we don't kind of do the same thing for the people that are approaching us now is kind of like, all right, we're screwing them and letting them take the long road, right? So I'm really appreciative that I did get to meet really good people that, you know, helped with the learning curve, right? It's hard to say. Like I said, I don't want to get
Lovey-dovey.
too, you know,
Philosophical.
yeah, lovey-dovey.
Soft-sided,
Yeah,
John.
so deep into this,
I didn't think too much of it.
but
I just have one thing to follow up. I like, you know, with me, it's a little different because I don't, you know, I've worked since Supermicro. I've worked at two basically startups, and
you
for the
had to
most
be
part,
you had to be the leader, right?
well, a little bit. I mean, my team at both places when I started was myself and my boss. We're like the only two electrical engineers. Well, the last place there was like three, but we were like the only people on our team that were doing what we were doing, and so I didn't really have like a mentor per se because my bosses were the same age as me. I mean, my current boss is like maybe a year older than me, and my last boss was probably 2 years older than me. But they both, you know, they're both highly intelligent and were like super understanding that coming in, especially at my last job, coming in, I had basically zero experience for that job. You know, Supermicro had zero application to a biotech startup company that was, you know, developing everything from scratch. So he was super helpful in like letting me grow and understanding and stuff. So to me, like instead of like thinking about somebody as like an older person, I think for me it's like trying to find people that need an opportunity to like grow and do their thing. Not that I'm like really good at what I do or anything. It's just, you know, I felt like I was given an opportunity kind of out of the blue, and I like appreciate that, and I'll never forget that. So you know, having other people that like giving another person an opportunity as a young engineer is like important to me.
One thing, like you guys talked about, like trying to pay your dues and, you know, get experience to like and really find something that was interesting, and then also talked about like, you know, finding like the right people to help you out or just, you know, give you free reign on things what to do. That's something I appreciate too. It's just like being autonomous. I feel like you learn most of the stuff just by doing it. I think that applies to almost anything, but like there's another thing that in software, it almost feels like no one really knows what they're doing. They just kind of figure things out, and it's hard to get that help. Do you guys feel kind of the same thing, or is there someone that you can go to that always seems to have the answer?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, I think there's not on everything, but I've definitely come across situations where I'm like, I really don't understand like why this is not working. And you like go talk to somebody and they're like, yeah, everything you did makes sense to me, and I don't know why it's not working either. So like, let's just sit down, and at that point, it's usually like sit down and try a few things until, you know, one of us gets a bright idea to try something new to figure out what's going on. But yeah, I think everybody is kind of just figuring it out as you go a little bit, to some extent, not completely, but to some extent.
But that kind of goes to show that, you know, a lot of times, even the people that you work around, you know, there are certain problems or certain issues that happen, either with coding or either with hardware, like me and Brady, that seems to pop up. That is just, you know, it's like, who would have thought that, you know, something so minute could have, you know, caused it to not work, right? And it's stuff like those that is like you can't teach that to somebody, and you can't like, you know, show them that this is what's going to create the failure. You actually have to run into that issue, and like Brady said, you know, you have to be persistent at trying to solve the solution. And once you finally do figure it out, if it takes you a week, if it takes you a month or 3 months, whatever, but once you figure it out, you're like, man, this is one of those 1 in a million type chances that it would behave like this, and we were able to figure it out. same thing with the code, right? You could have, I don't know, thousands of lines of code.
Yep.
And then, it could be just like, oh, you missed a parenthesis here or a comma here that the software didn't check, or, things like that. And it didn't point it out. But then once you figure it out, you're like, oh man, this is one of those really unique situations that you figured out. So next time you do see something similar, you're like, oh, I know what to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, like Chris and Brady, like, I don't think there are answers to everything. I think, all of us that do the work in our fields, there could be people that have more experience in hitting those same walls that we're facing, but I don't think those walls are 100%, always going to be the same. I'm pretty sure there's walls that even those experts haven't seen that we're still facing, right?
For sure.
So I mean, it's impossible to like really know everything stuff,
Yeah.
but
Unless you're Elon. But that's a different story.
Yeah, talk about their work culture. I heard like with Tesla, like they don't believe in work-life balance at all. That's an interesting topic too. I mean, is work-life balance like is that something that you think about these days? Or are you still like, I don't think, like, for example, John, you have a kid, like you need work-life balance. But Brady, like, what about you? Like, are you just all work these days, or how do you try to break things down?
I try to balance it, but again, startup life's a little different than like, a large company like maybe John's at. For me, and being like a small team, because my team now is myself, and then I have one other guy that works underneath me, and then I report to my boss, whose background is electrical engineering. So, for me, I try to balance work life, and I have like things in my life that are like I really push to not miss. But I don't have a kid. I don't like. In reality, I don't have tons of life responsibilities.
Maybe one, right?
Yeah, I mean, I am married, and so like that's important. And then we have, and if you ask my wife, we have a kid and that it's a dog, but I'm not quite on that level. But we, I definitely struggle with keeping a work-life balance at times, because, like I said, I'm one of the only people on my team. So if something's going wrong, whether it's at a supplier, that's not here in Santa Cruz, or at our manufacturing facility in San Jose, I kind of have to just like jump. Like, I'm not constantly, but usually at least once or twice a month. I have like texts or chat messages going out on like the weekends, like trying to get things solved, factory, or working to 10, 11 o'clock at night. Happens. So I definitely struggle with the work-life balance, but at the same time, I there's certain things that, like, I have to pause. If it's like an important family event, it's just like, hey, not gonna happen this weekend. I can't work this weekend. It's just, it's more important than work, unfortunately. But yeah, see, I think you just have to like choose the important things and what stage of life you're in. For me, like I said, I have very few actual responsibilities. So, it's like working on the weekend it happens for me, and it's just part of it.
Do you embrace it, like, because you like what you're doing, so
yeah,
you don't mind?
No, I mean, obviously, I don't want to work
too hard
every weekend, and like this past summer, from about, I don't know, early June to middle of October or something, it was like a crazy time for me. I was working like 6 days a week. There was like several nights where I got home at like 5 a.m. and then like slept a couple hours, then went back to work. And I definitely don't want to go back to that, because that's exhausting, and life like goes out the window. I didn't see any of my friends, or barely saw my wife. But I have always had, and I think I always will have, like this problem solving thing in my head. And if there's a problem, I want to find a solution. So I'm like driven by that. So usually if I'm working on the weekend, it's because there's an issue. So I'm like driven to find the problem. And so it doesn't, that's what's driving me.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, that's good. I mean, that that you have that. So
yeah.
I mean,
And I think it's part of most engineers is like problem solving.
yeah, it's pretty much
and
what we do.
Yeah. And I said, I think just depending on your stage in life, like varies your priorities and how like important work is to you. And work is not the most important thing in my life, but I do really enjoy it. And I mean, if I had a kid, it would be a different situation, but I don't, and don't really plan on that. So
Yeah.
John on the other situation.
It's different, right? Like the whole viewpoint kind of changes once you have a kid and once you become, responsible for another, not only your wife, but like, another human being now, right? I used to think like Brady a lot too, and like I said, I think that's just how engineers are kind of bred. Like we're problem solvers. We like to find solutions, and when we do find the solutions, it gives us like this great sense of like accomplishment, pride that we were able to solve something that was pretty complex. I used to be like that too prior to the kid. Whenever customers had issues and things like that, it's almost like being a doctor on call. Like they would call us up on Saturdays, Sundays, and say, "Hey, there's some issue. I need you to come in to troubleshoot this or problem solve this." I used to be more gung ho about, yeah, I'll do it. I'll be there, right? I'm your guy. But now it's kind of taking a turn where it's like, once I'm off the clock, I'm not trying to answer any more emails, and it's weird because there's one part of me that's like, oh no, this is your job, you have to do it, right? You got to be on top of it. But the other side of me is like, no, you need to, like, once you're done, you got to like put that aside and you got to go into dad mode, husband mode, right? You got to be changing it up, because the thing I don't want to do is, and they portray it in movies all the time, like, in Hollywood, where you have parents that are working, so hard, and they put their work in front of their kids. And the next thing you know, their kids like lose that relationship with their parents, and then they become rebels and things like that. Maybe I've seen too many Hollywood movies or something like that, but I don't want that to happen. And I don't want to be like, blink of an eye, and then next thing you know, my kid's like 10 or something, and I've just like fast forward through everything, and I didn't see him like walk for the first time or talk for the first time or do something silly. I want to be there and remember those moments. So definitely, work-life balance has been much better since the kid has been in my life. But it's so different, right? Because now I'm so concerned and worried about his well-being and what he learns and things like that. And it's I don't know how to describe it, but it's like, even like if he burps or farts, or sometimes it's funny, my kid, he actually he scares himself up at night when he farts in the middle of the night. Like there's been times where he's sleeping, and then he passes gas and he farts, and then it startles him and he wakes up and he starts crying. But I find that type of stuff very hilarious. At the same time, it's those type of moments that you don't want to miss, right? So work-life balance for me, it's been a lot better since the addition of the kid.
Hey, you guys can't hear my dog, can you?
A little bit, but
hold on.
Yeah, I do hear him a little bit. Speaking of dogs, how's your dog doing?
My dog is good. I actually we were out on a hike this morning with the dog, and Leah were with some friends, and then Leah stayed and had brunch with them, and I came home to get this work on this. So he'll be here any second, and I'm sure he's gonna come flying in and jump on me. So there'll be that.
Wait, what kind of dog do you have?
It's
That's
an
gonna be
English
awesome.
Cocker Spaniel.
With long ears and
What'd you
soft
say?
hair. Long ears, soft hair.
Yeah, really long ears, little mops.
Yeah. Those
uh,
things are pretty ugly. Wait, they
Cleans
kind
your
of have like
hardwood.
a squishy face too,
he's
or
like an
angry
English
face.
one, so it's a little bit longer snout. I think. I really don't know a lot about dogs. I just know that he's a full energy, pretty much all the time. So he's only a year and a half, so he's still a puppy.
Yeah, those things are.
But he'll I'm sure make a guest appearance any second once Leah's home. So I had one other thing on the work life thing. It also depends, I think, on your spouse a lot. Like, well, if you're married or have a girlfriend or not. If you're,
Yeah.
for me, Leah's pretty committed to her work as well, and she works not similar, but she works at times, long hours. So then it's, we both are like, gotta have an understanding, basically, like,
Yeah.
hey, like this is what I gotta get done. So, but at the same time, I don't want to like diminish work-life balance because I think it's super important. If you have something important in your life, like I think you should take care of that first, and work should come second. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think the first step is kind of just identifying what you want.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's why for each person it's different. But yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you guys are on the kind of the same path, then it's kind of okay.
What's it like for you? Because you're freelance, aren't you?
No, I'm so I took a my last day at my last job was September 29 of last year. So I've taken a pretty good long break.
Yeah.
So I've been chilling. I did a little bit of traveling. Just kind of like actually in between jobs, I took a 2-year break. I don't know if I told you guys this. So I worked at Uniquify, right?
Yeah.
You guys know that story? Like
Yeah,
I worked
with a lot of our
Oliver,
classmates. Yeah.
Kevin Viola.
Like half our class.
There's a lot of people, quite a lot, yeah. And then after that, that's when I made the switch to computer engineering or software engineering. But I took a 2-year break, and right now I'm kind of I'm looking for work again, just because I think I have a better direction of what I want to do. I wanted to have a side project. I really wanted to build like a side project. So I have that, and I got a little bit more, I guess, runway now. I was an idea of what I want to do, and then I'm going to find a job to kind of help me, support myself until I really feel like I'm in a place where I can, leave and start my own thing.
Cool.
That's kind of been my goal. So, I mean, in terms of work-life balance, I'm just all grind right now because I'm single, and so that's all I can do. Just focus on myself. But like myself is really like, well, I don't I grind for myself, but like in terms of like when I'm at a company, I give as much as I feel like I get back. So if my role is like really defined and I feel like I'm getting paid well for it, then of course, yeah, I'm gonna try to stay there. But like if I feel like it's taking away from other things that I want to do, then like for Uniquify, when I realized that's when I knew it was like time to go. But
yeah, definitely. It should be a give and take on a job. You should feel that you're being compensated properly, and that that you're an important piece to the company and all that stuff. So, which for me, I think it's different for in a large company, but for me, I think I find that definitely in like small companies, especially after working. Supermicro had, when we were there, I don't know how many people they have now, but they had like 2,500 employees. And since then, my last company was like 60 or 70 at the largest, and this company is about the same, something like that, at least at headquarters. So I really prefer small company and have like feeling like I have a large role in the company, or like maybe that's not the word I'm looking for, but a large like I'm contributing, making a change. So
all right, last question. I like talking about finance and investing, but if you can predict what sort of either it could be anything, but like maybe in technology, since that's what we've been talking about, like what could be the technology that will, I don't know, propel us forward, and could be something that is worth investing in, or that you foresee kind of taking over the world.
I have 3.
oh,
Okay.
Sean's well thought out. I'm not.
Well,
Go ahead.
Just hear me out. I think 5G. 5G is one of them.
Was that the one that was like people
autonomous.
thought they was causing cancer or something, or causing coronavirus?
Well, yeah, they thought that it was going to be tied to it, but if you think about it, you know, a lot of the new technology that's being developed right now is all, you know, centered around the new development of 5G, which is the new band, right? And then, so the 3 things I have is autonomous vehicles, 5G, and AI. So autonomous vehicle, not because I'm a Tesla owner, but you know, I think, you know, that could be really helpful, right? There's something to assist you with taking away the you know, the day-to-day exercise of driving. And I'm not saying that because I love, you know, driving. I don't know if you guys know, but
Of course, yeah.
you know, but I think we're slowly moving toward that. I mean, you already see a trend. All car manufacturers have at least one electric vehicle in their design, right? But, you know, overall, everybody's still trying to perfect and get the first fully autonomous driving vehicle out there, right? With a system in place to, you know, accept that and make it workable. If that's the case, then it's going to be a lot easier. People can just go into their cars and get from point A to point B without needing too much stress or input, and, you know, perhaps even prevent, you know, traffic accidents in the future, right? If it's fully deployed. 5G is more of a short-term, near future thing. I think that's going to be big in 2021, 2022 for sure. I think 5G is basically going to be in, you know, all our phones very shortly. You know, as phones get developed, you know, everybody's probably going to switch over to that band. And then AI, AI is the one that I think that's going to be more dominating the market in, I would say, maybe like a 10-year span. You know, we've been talking about artificial intelligence now for a long time already, I guess, but the concept of AI being more, you know, more in a almost ready to release state, I think is still, you know, sometimes away. But definitely that's something that we can't, you know, ignore. AI, I think, is going to be one of the things that is going to help propel the future for sure.
Yeah. So I like the idea of AI, just as long as it doesn't make us dumber. That's my
Idiocracy?
Well, I don't think.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
who created AI, right? It's people that create AI. I don't think it's going to make it, you know.
Right. But then, like, sometimes defining AI is, you know, some people think it's just making everything completely autonomous, or some people see it
iRobot.
Or people think that it's actual intelligence, like it's creating like a human like something mechanical with the intelligence of a human. So that's several things, but
yeah,
I just think it's weird to take away a lot of important decisions away from the human being. I think that would be the flaw in developing or investing too much in AI.
Yeah, it's like how do you determine who shall live or die because you created a software, right? And it did the calculation.
It's like Westworld. Did you watch that?
No,
Spoiler
not yet.
alert. Okay.
I
Did you watch that?
I like started it. I can't. I'm struggling. I'm trying to finish it, but I just can't get into it.
Oh,
I don't know why.
Which season?
The very
last
beginning of season 2. So
Okay.
like I finished season 1. It was like okay, and all my friends were like, "Oh, but season 1's so good," and I'm just
Yeah,
like,
what? Oh man, I was really yeah.
But on like a lesser thing, like to Chris's point, on AI is I feel like you see that in sports, like on like a less serious scale of like they're implementing like
Statistics.
not like AI, like not it's not technically AI, but like replay with like the foul balls in baseball, or like there's been lots of talk of like having like robot umpires and stuff calling balls and strikes, and people are like,
I like that.
I mean, I kind of do, but at the same time, I'm like, part of the like interesting part of baseball, like for a batter, is like the strike zone changes. Like it's, I mean, I understand that like if I was playing professionally, I'd be like, no, definitely AI, or like not AI, like robot umpire, because like my paycheck depends on me being good, and it's very difficult to be good when it's a moving target. But that also like separates the really good from the good players, of like somebody that can adjust to like
A strike zone changing.
a strike zone changing because the umpire changed. Every umpire has their own strike zone. So I think like you see pushback on like in sports and stuff about like not going to robot umpires or AI, that kind of stuff. So it's interesting.
Yeah. Well, we could change it every now and then.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you're doing too good, and you're getting paid too much. We're gonna lower that, make that strike zone smaller.
The people at the top will always find a way to screw the people on the bottom.
Yeah. Right. That's what I was getting at. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, like this is, I feel like a little bit of a cop out, but I mean, green technology, I think is like definitely something that needs to be invested in and like furthered. Whether that's I was talking to a friend about this yesterday. Hydrogen fuel cells, like I still think that's like a viable option and like a green technology, even more than like an electric vehicle, because hydrogen is significantly more abundant in the universe than lithium.
Mm-hmm.
Like what's the other one? Battery for electric vehicles, battery technology. There's so much improvement to be made there.
So is
energy.
This a second point for Tesla because they?
Yeah. I mean, they're developing battery technology, right? But there's still so much more of like creating a more stable battery, a more energy dense battery, longer lasting batteries over time. There's like tons of improvement there that can be made. And then an interesting one to me that I read about a while back, which I feel like I read that Elon even supports this idea of transitioning from battery technology to supercapacitor technology, which is super interesting to me because batteries have their limitations. As you discharge them, they get warm. As you charge them, they get warm. And like every time you do that cycle, it diminishes their lifetime. Whereas theoretically, on a capacitor, you can charge and discharge with infinite amount of power, infinite amount of current, and you don't have that affecting their life, which is extremely interesting. And obviously, supercapacitors are still a ways away from being able to be used in a car because of the physical size, but it's interesting technology. I think that could be developed and really improve electric vehicles.
So with what you just said, I don't want you to say anything that's NDA approved or whatnot. You ever think about supercapacitors in your one wheel design?
I mean, for us at this point, like I don't think that's feasible. I don't know if you've looked at supercapacitors, but any sort of like energy density is like massive. They're huge, right? And we're not in the business of developing supercapacitors, but I think personally, I think it'd be super cool if we could. I mean, that would be because you don't limit. If you don't have a charge current limit, you can charge up super fast, and you don't have to worry about them overheating while you're charging. So,
how long does it take to charge full battery? Yeah, for one
on a
wheel.
one wheel. So we have two models. We have like our XR, which is like our standard charger we sell with it. I think it takes roughly 2 hours to charge, and then our smaller one, the pint version, takes it. The charger we sell with it is a little bit slower, just because, and so it takes about 2 hours as well, if I remember right. But both of them we sell like an upgraded charger that reduces it to about an hour.
And then battery life is.
So on like the XR, you get about 18 miles, I think. And then on the pint, you get somewhere between like 8 and 10, depending. That's super heavily dependent on what surface you're riding on, how heavy you are, how much air is in your tire. It's pretty funny when we had our German housemate here. He was, riding one of mine around, and he was like, "Man, the range on this thing is terrible." He's like, "I don't understand." And I go over to it and like press on it. I was like, "The tire's completely flat, dude." Of course. So we pumped up the tire, and it like over doubled his range. And he's like, "Oh, that's way better. That makes way more sense."
Yeah, that's why you're the engineer. He's
so yeah. So I mean, yeah. Again, like to answer John's question, we're not like in that business of like developing a technology like supercapacitors. That's like PhD research stuff, I feel like, and we're developing a consumer product. So,
but it's interesting to see that that you brought that up, right? That there's multiple outlets to look at for going green, right? It's not just one outlet, right? But we're always trying to figure out what's the best technology that we can actually invest into, do more R&D research so that we can get the most out of it.
Yeah, I mean, supercapacitors, just because I was like reading about them a few weeks ago or whatever, it's super interesting to me, in that for the reasons that I stated, just because like it's interesting to me. I don't know enough about them to tell you how viable that technology is as far as like shrinking and making it feasible in electric vehicles. But I feel like everything over time gets smaller and cheaper. So
I think it's sort of interesting that you guys all mentioned sort of B2B ideas. And given that you guys are more like back end, is how I'd call it, like really back end. So I thought that was pretty cool. And you guys were pretty similar in that sense.
Yeah, definitely. Man, yeah, I guess I'm back end in that, like, I'm not, my direct work isn't customer facing, but it kind of is.
There's a loophole for the customer.
John, on the other hand, is just business to business.
Yeah, but it's interesting. Now that you got me all interested in this one wheel, I gotta look up the specs, the engineering specs on it later.
Yeah, you need to ride one. We need to hang out.
Check it out.
Yeah, we do. We need to set, some of the stuff. I still remember the days that we used to play softball and dodgeball. With Luke too.
Yeah. That was really fun.
Hey Brady, did you fall the first time when you got on the one wheel?
No. So the first time I did it actually was before I worked there. Somebody bought one at my last company, and I was actually able to ride it, but I don't know why. Maybe like it was because there's like 15 people watching me or what, but like my knees wouldn't stop shaking. Like I got the like not forward to back, but side to side. My knees just started wobbling.
Oh my God.
But like once I tried it like with nobody around, I guess not a huge deal. Yeah. It's pretty easy actually. I mean, it's self-balancing. So once you like you put your back foot on and then you step down on the front, as soon as you like step down, it turns itself on and it like catches you, and then you can kind of just balance there back and forth.
So it's not like stepping really on a hoverboard. whereas like people just fall backward or face forward.
But you still
No.
need balance, though, right?
What?
Like a decent amount of balance to stay on.
Yeah, but it's less forward to back balance and more side to side. Like the tire's, pretty flat like this, and so like, assuming you're going this way.
Hey, John, we gotta go check this out, and then
assuming you're going
do a
this
demo.
way. Assuming you're going this way, it's like for me, it was like this direction on the tire, like side to side, and less about forward and back.
I see.
Okay.
Because forward and back, it balances you pretty well.
Yeah, I seen your guys' marketing things on YouTube. Every now and then I'll get a pop-up ad of one wheel and whatnot, and they're like all-terrain vehicle, and then you see these people riding through like the forest and whatnot, and then back onto the streets, and I'm like, streets maybe, but forest, I don't know.
Yeah, it definitely takes some time. I had a friend text me the other day and was like, "Hey, like I'm looking at buying one. Which one should I get?" And I'm like, "Well, the smaller one's tire smaller, so if you're gonna go off road, it's definitely gonna be like a steeper learning curve because it's less stable.
Yeah.
But it's definitely doable. I'm not very good. When I'm riding, I'm like cruising around town. I'm usually not off road, but we have people I work with that are pretty good and they can cruise pretty quickly on dirt trails like up by UCSC and stuff. It's pretty impressive.
Question is, does Leah use it?
She has, and she enjoys it, but she hasn't done it in a while because like last night we were gonna go get food around the corner. I was like, let's just one wheel over there, and she was like,
I'll walk.
She's like, let's just drive real quick and get it. She just gets nervous. Like I think the hardest thing for people to get a hold, to grasp is like the dismount, getting off of it. Because once you're on and moving, it's not that big a deal. But like coming to a stop and getting off is like the hardest part. At least it was for me, because you had to come to a stop, and then the front foot pad is like 2 force sensors. It's like one, but it's split into 2 zones. And so you have to come to a stop and then remove your foot from one. So you kind of like lift up under your toe, and then it shuts off and it leans back. But like when you do that and you go up on your toe, maybe if you're not like all the way off the other one, now you're like balancing with your toe and it's not shutting off. It becomes super awkward. So
there is a learning curve to it. It's like a bike, right? You can bike to a stop sign completely, but then you're really just balancing.
Yeah, there's definitely a learning curve, but I would say most people like get the hang of it in like 5 minutes, at least to an extent where they can ride around by themselves. I mean, my last Thanksgiving, I took a couple home to my parents' house, and my 70-year-old parents were like riding around on it. So it's not like super difficult. I mean, they had I was like right there to catch them. They fell because they're 70 and I don't want them to fall. Yeah. But, they both got the hang of it pretty quickly. It's surprisingly easy. So, but you definitely need to try it.
All right. Next time we meet up, I'm going to try it out.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't fall flat on face.
Yeah, let's do it.
Definitely.
Well, right now we need to figure out when is this.
John needs to figure out how to solve this whole Corona thing.
I don't think it can be solved. I think it's
all right. Well, thanks guys for sharing.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having us.
All right,
cool. Send it to us.
All right, thanks guys. We'll see you guys later.